Welcome to ZoomInData, your go-to channel for in-depth Azure Cloud, Serverless, and modern development interview preparation. In this video, we dive deep into the top 25 Azure Functions deployment options interview questions for 2026. Perfect for developers, DevOps engineers, architects, and anyone preparing for AZ-204 certification or deploying production-grade serverless applications reliably and efficiently. We cover every major deployment method: zip deploy, run from package, deployment slots, container-based deployment, GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps CD, Azure CLI, Kudu, ARM, Bicep automation, blue-green strategies, rollback options, continuous deployment, large package handling, custom domains, deployment history, and comprehensive best practices, all explained in clear, detailed, interview-ready technical language to help you confidently ace your next interview. 1. What are the main deployment methods for Azure Functions? The primary deployment methods are zip deploy, direct push of a .zip package, run from package, recommended for production, deployment slots, for zero downtime updates, and container deployment, Docker images on container apps, ACS, or Arc. Continuous deployment options include GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps Pipelines, Azure App Service Deployment Center, Git, FTP, local Git, and ARM, Bicep, CLI scripting for infrastructure as code. External package URL deployment pulls a .zip from a remote location, e.g., blob storage, during startup, useful for C/CD integration. All methods support both code-first, functions plus host, JSON, and container-based approaches. Run from package is the Microsoft recommended default for most production scenarios in 2026. 1. What are the main deployment methods for Azure Functions? The primary deployment methods are zip deploy, direct push of a .zip package, run from package, recommended for production, deployment slots, for zero downtime updates, and container deployment, Docker images on container apps, ACS, or Arc. Continuous deployment options include GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps Pipelines, Azure App Service Deployment Center, Git, FTP, local Git, and ARM, Bicep, CLI scripting for infrastructure as code. External package URL deployment pulls a .zip from a remote location, e.g., blob storage, during startup, useful for C/CD integration. All methods support both code-first, functions plus host, JSON, and container-based approaches. Run from package is the Microsoft recommended default for most production scenarios in 2026. 3. What is run from package deployment? Run from package is the production recommended deployment mode where Azure Functions runs directly from a read-only .zip package mounted as the file system, no unzipping on server. Enabled by setting the app setting website _run_ from _package equals 1, mounts uploaded.zip, or equals less than URL greater than, mounts remote.zip from blob storage or SAS URL. Eliminates file locking issues, reduces deployment time, prevents partial deployments, and improves cold start performance by avoiding unzip overhead. Supports deployment slots, atomic updates, swap only after successful deployment, and is the default behavior when using zip deploy with Core Tools v3+. 4. How do you configure deployment slots? Deployment slots are configured in the Function app portal under Deployment right-pointing arrow Deployment slots right-pointing arrow Add slot, name e.g., staging. Each slot is a separate instance of the Function app with its own app settings, connection strings, and deployment history. Production slot is the live one. Deploy code to staging slot, test thoroughly, then swap staging with production for zero downtime deployment. Swap is atomic and preserves slot-specific settings. Slots inherit most production settings but allow slot-specific overrides, e.g., different connection strings, feature flags, supported in premium and dedicated plans only. 5. Explain container deployment to Azure Functions. Container deployment runs your Function app inside a custom Docker container, allowing full control over the OS, runtime, dependencies, and libraries. Build a Docker file with the official Functions base image, mcr.microsoft.com/azure-functions/less-than-language greater than 4.0. Copy your code and push to Azure Container Registry or Docker Hub. Deploy to Azure Container Apps, Serverless Containers, Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, or Azure Arc-enabled Kubernetes. Scale using KEDA for event-driven autoscaling. Offers maximum portability, sidecar support, Dapper, Istio, custom base images, and enterprise governance for teams already invested in containers, Kubernetes. 6. What is website_run_from_package setting? Website_run_from_package is the app setting that enables run from package mode. Value 1 mounts the uploaded .zip as a read-only file system. Value less than URL greater than mounts a remote .zip from blob storage, SAS URL. Prevents file locking issues during deployment, reduces deployment time, no unzip, improves cold start performance, and ensures atomic updates. Automatically enabled when using Azure Function app publish or VS Code deployment in recent Core Tools versions. Required for zero downtime deployments with slots and is the Microsoft recommended deployment method for production in 2026. 7. How do you deploy from GitHub Actions? Use the official Azure Functions -action at v1 GitHub Action to deploy from GitHub Actions workflow, github/workflows/main.yml. Authenticate with Azure using OIDC, federated credentials, or service principal secrets. Publish with Azure Function app publish or AZ Function app deployment. Supports run from package, deployment slots, slot staging, and custom build steps. .NET Publish, npm build. Trigger on push to main, PR merge, or schedule. Add testing, linting, and approval gates for production safety. 8. Explain deployment via Azure CLI. Azure CLI deployment uses AZ Function app deployment source config zip for zip deploy or AZ Function app config app settings set for run from package URL. Full command example. AZ Function app deployment source config zip, resource group myrg, name my function app, src function app.zip. Supports slot deployment, slot staging, and configuration of website_run_from_package. Ideal for scripting, CD pipelines, or one-off deployments from local machine or automation. 9. What is slot swapping in Functions? Slot swapping is the atomic exchange of routing and content between two slots, e.g., staging left-right arrow production, with zero downtime. After deploying and testing in staging slot, swap moves staging to production URL and production to staging URL, preserves slot-specific app settings. Supported only in premium and dedicated plans. Consumption plan does not support slots. Swap is reversible and preserves traffic routing, SSL bindings, and custom domains. 10. How do you deploy to Linux versus Windows functions? Windows functions, default, support.NET, Node, JS, Python, PowerShell, deploy via zip deploy, run from package, or VS Tools. Linux functions support Node, JS, Python, Java, .NET Core, 8+. Deploy as container, recommended, or zip deploy, limited support. Use, OS type Linux in AZ function app create or portal to create Linux plan. Container deployment is required for custom runtimes on Linux. Windows supports native runtime hosting. 11. Explain external package URL deployment. External package URL deployment sets website _run from package equals https://functionapp.zip to mount a remote.zip package from blob storage or SAS URL. Function app starts by downloading, mounting the remote package on startup. Supports versioned packages in blob storage. Ideal for CD pipelines that upload package to storage and update the URL setting. Enables immutable deployments and reduces deployment time compared to direct zip deploy. 12. How do you manage deployment credentials? Use Azure AD-based deployment credentials, OIDC federated identity, with GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps for passwordless, secure deployment. Function app publish profile, download from portal right pointing arrow get publish profile, contains FTP, zip deploy credentials. Rotate publish profile credentials regularly. Use service principals with scoped RBAC for automation. Never commit credentials to source control. Use GitHub Secrets or Azure Key Vault. 13. What is the role of Kudu in deployment? Kudu is the open-source engine behind Azure App Service, Functions Deployment and Management Portal, site.azurewebsites.net. Provides deployment dashboard, file browser, console, PowerShell, Bash, log streaming, and zip push deployment endpoint. Accessible at https://functionapp.scm, azurewebsites.net for manual file upload, log viewing, and debugging. Used internally by zip deploy, deployment slots, and deployment center for orchestration. 14. How do you deploy durable functions artifacts? Deploy durable functions the same way as regular functions. Zip deploy, run from package, or container deployment includes orchestrator, activity, entity code. Task Hub storage, Azure Storage Tables, queues, blobs, is configured via host, JSON or app settings, no special deployment needed. Use deployment slots to test new orchestration versions in staging before swapping to production. Monitor orchestration instances post-deployment using durable functions monitoring tools. 15. Explain blue-green deployment strategy. Blue-green deployment maintains two identical environments. Blue equals live, green equals new version. Deploy to green, test, then swap traffic to green. In functions, use deployment slots, staging equals green, production equals blue, and perform slot swap for zero downtime switch. After swap, blue becomes the fallback. Roll back by swapping again. Supported only in premium, dedicated plans. Ideal for zero downtime, low-risk production updates. 16. How do you handle large deployment packages? Use run from package mode to avoid unzipping large packages on the server. Mount directly from .zip. Compress package efficiently. Exclude bin, obj, node_modules, venv if using external build. Use external package URL, website_run_from_package equals less than blob URL greater than, to avoid uploading large files during deployment. Split large dependencies into shared libraries or use container deployment for very large apps. 17. What is the deployment center in Portal? Deployment Center is the centralized portal experience for configuring continuous deployment sources, GitHub, Azure repos, Bitbucket, local Git, FTP. Supports one-click setup for GitHub Actions integration, automatic deployment on push, merge. Shows deployment history, logs, and status. Allows manual sync or rollback to previous deployments. Integrates with Kudu for detailed logs and file browsing. 18. How do you deploy custom containers? Build Docker image with official Azure Functions base image, mcr.microsoft.com/azure-functions/less-than-language greater than 4.0 app service, or custom base. Push image to Azure Container Registry or Docker Hub. Set container image settings in Function App Portal, container settings right pointing arrow image source. Deploy to Azure Container Apps, Serverless, or ACS, Kubernetes for full orchestration. Configure environment variables, ports, AT, and scaling rules in Container Platform. 19. Explain deployment rollback options. Use deployment slots. Swap back to previous slot if new version fails. Deployment Center shows history. Redeploy previous successful deployment with one click. Run from package with versioned URLs. Blob storage. Allows rollback by updating website_run_from_package to previous package URL. Git-based C/CD allows revert commit and redeploy. Monitor via Application Insights post-rollback. 20. How do you automate deployments with ARM, Bicep? Use ARM, Bicep templates to define function app, hosting plan, app settings, and deployment source, e.g., GitHub Actions workflow. Deploy code separately via C/CD. Use Azure CLI or PowerShell in pipeline to update app settings or trigger deployment. Bicep preferred in 2026 for cleaner syntax and modules. Deploy with AZ deployment group create. Includes slot configuration, private endpoints, and scaling rules in IAC for reproducible environments. 21. What is the difference between zip and container deploy? Zip deploy packages code plus host, JSON plus extensions into zip and runs on Azure Managed Runtime, Windows, Linux. Container deploy packages code plus runtime plus dependencies into Docker image. Runs on your chosen container platform with full OS, runtime control. Zip deploy is simpler and faster for standard scenarios. Container deploy offers maximum customization, portability, and sidecar support. Zip uses run from package for performance. Container uses Docker image layers for caching and versioning. 22. How do you configure continuous deployment? In Deployment Center, select Source, GitHub, Azure Repos, Bitbucket. Authorize, choose Branch, and enable continuous deployment. GitHub integration creates GitHub Actions workflow automatically. Supports build, deploy steps. Configure environment variables, deployment slots, and post-deployment testing in workflow YAML. Use deployment slots for safe CD, deploy to staging, run tests, then swap to production. 23. Explain deployment source sync. Deployment source sync, manual sync in Deployment Center, triggers a new deployment from the configured source, GitHub, local Git, etc. Useful for forcing deployment after manual changes or when automatic trigger fails. Shows sync status, logs, and history. Supports rollback to previous sync. Not needed for GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps. They push directly, used mainly for portal configured sources. 24. How do you manage deployment history? Deployment history is visible in Deployment Center right-pointing arrow logs and deployment slots right-pointing arrow deployment history. Each deployment shows commit ID, author, timestamp, status, and logs. Supports redeploy of any previous version. Kudu, scm.azurewebsites.net, provides detailed deployment logs, file diffs, and rollback options. Application Insights correlates deployments with performance, failure metrics for root cause analysis. 25. Best practices for function deployment. Always use run from package mode. Website_run_from_package equals 1 or URL. For production to avoid file locking, enable zero downtime, and improve cold starts. Use deployment slots in premium, dedicated plans for safe testing and atomic swaps. Never deploy directly to production slot. Automate with GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps using OIDC Federation. No secrets. Include testing, linting, and approval gates. Monitor deployments with application insights and capacity metrics. Use versioned packages, URLs for easy rollback. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you prepare for your Azure Functions interview, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your network. Don't forget to subscribe to ZoomInData and hit the bell icon for more in-depth cloud computing, serverless, and Azure interview prep videos every week. Drop your questions or topic requests in the comments. Let's zoom in on your success together.